My name is She Sujuan. The subject of our group presentation is Malaysia Floods. As you know, Malaysia experienced the worst flooding in 45 years. Now, divided our presentation into the following parts. So let's think about background of flooding. Malaysia experienced continuous heavy rainfall due to the flow of the northeastern monsoon and the low pressure system, which led to river flooding and disaster. It's also believed the excessive rainfall is the result of La Nina phenomenon, and due to high atmosphere humidity caused by climate change and extreme rainfall distribution, as well as longer monsoon seasons than in previous years. Another important aspect, the excessive precipitation caused landslides. Move on to man-made causes. According to local sources, one of the main reasons of the flooding is soil erosion, caused by years of timber harvesting and other forms of deforestation. Experts believe the flood in Malaysia cannot be blamed on the climate, but human factors such as the failure of the National Security Council to act quickly are to blame for the devastating situation.
This is part 2, Inadequate Development Planning and Practice. In December 2022, more than 22,000 flood victims have been evacuated in 8 states, including 10,000 in central Malaysia's Pahang state. According to a government website, Malaysian authorities evacuated more than 22,000 people from homes in several states on Sunday due to the worst flooding in 7 years. Most scientists believe that although the direct cause of flood disaster is a long-term continuous rainstorm caused by climatic anomalies, human factors are also the main cause. Southeast Asia is the region most affected by the climate, and if warning is not controlled, it will bring serious disasters to the region. In this case, Malaysia's response policy is 1. Development of policy frameworks and research reports. 2. Use clean energy. 3. Develop climate cooperation with other countries. Out of respect of the situation, Malaysia has joined many international climate organizations and establishment of the Malaysia Climate Change Group.
Part 3. Climate change. Climate change can happen and does happen for natural reasons. But the big difference with climate change that's happening now is the humans are causing it. Human cause on climate change mostly happen through a lot of different activities, such as deforestation and use of fossil fuel. According to Global Forest Map developed by Google, it shows that Malaysia had the world's highest rate of forest loss between year 2000 and 2012. The total forest loss during the period amount to 14% of its forest cover. The use of forests are to move more water than any other ecosystem on land. It's turning soil water into moisture in the air, which will cooling the atmosphere above them. So, the more the deforestation happens in Malaysia, then the more serious climate change Malaysia will face. Besides that, the use of fossil fuel is also the reason that will cause climate change. Tenaga Nasional Berhad are known as the biggest electric supplier in Malaysia. According to their latest annual report, year 2020, it shows that almost 50% of the electric was generated by burning the coal. When the coal are burned, They will release a large amount of carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas into the air. Greenhouse gas trap heat in our atmosphere, which will cause global warming. Climate change already observed in Malaysia. According to Climate Change Knowledge Portal, Malaysia's average temperature increased significantly since year 19,061 and reached the peak at 26 Celsius on year 2020. The warmer temperature will cause more heatwave and drought, but also more rainfall in localized areas as the atmosphere holds more moisture, about 7% more moisture for every 1 Celsius increase. As average temperature of Malaysia increases, so more evaporation occurs, which increases the overall precipitation. So, what is precipitation? Precipitation is the water released from clouds in the form of rains or snow. So, increase in evaporation can also produce more intense precipitation events. For example, heavier rain that can increase the flood risk. As the temperature increase in Malaysia, it is not surprised that rainfall increased in Kuala Lumpur. The annual rainfall in Kuala Lumpur is 2,400 mm. However, Meteorological Department mentioned that KL recorded the highest amount of rainfall at 1,141 mm on a month, December 2021. This exceeds the average rainfall for a month and causes a serious flood. To slow down the serious situation of climate change, Malaysia remains committed to climate action and has recently set a target of becoming carbon neutral at the earliest by year 2050. As set out in the 12th Malaysia Plan, government determined to reduce greenhouse gas emission intensity by 45% GDP by year 2030. Besides that, Malaysia government also intensified the development and utilization of renewable energy source to meet the 31% of renewable energy target by year 2025. Lastly, government intend to promote low carbon and climate resilient economy. Domestic industry players are required to focus on environmental, social and governance goals in their business practice.
This is part 4, Budget Allocation for Natural Disaster in Malaya.
December 22, Malaysia Prime Minister Ismail has announced that the government will allocate 100 million ringgit, $23.74 million to repair flood-affected infrastructure, and each affected family will receive 1,000 ringgit, $103.7 to rebuild their home. Under Malaysia's various five-year plans, the government has spent billions of ringgit over the years on flood prevention and mitigation measures, which have increased significantly. Records shows that funding for those projects has increased from RM14 million under the second Malaria Plan 1971 to 1975 to surge to an estimated RM17 billion over the period 2006 to 2020. This demonstrates the seriousness of the government's commitment to flood risk prevention and reduction. Funding for structural flood prevention projects alone increased for flood from RM1.79 billion in 2001 to 2005 to RM5.81 billion in 2006 to 2010. While all those efforts have resulted in government spending billions of ringgit on flood prevention, mitigation, and disaster management, many questions have been raised about the effectiveness of the implementation of flood-related policies. In recent 2020 budget, allocation of Rm 446.9 million and Rm 150 million were announced for flood prevention projects and maintenance of existing flood storage ponds respectively. The fund should be a driving force for integrated private planning and sustainable restoration management. Let's look at the budgets of other countries for natural disasters. The total expenditure on disaster prevention and control in China in 2020 is close to $2 trillion. The annual budget for natural disasters in United States is approximately $1 billion. To develop a national plan for climate change adaptation following the deeply floods, which displaced nearly 70,000 people, the Ministry of Environment and Water is seeking $3 million in assistance from the UN Green Climate Fund (GCF). However, the amount of money requested is minimal compared to the amount committed by the Malaysia government the flood prevention work. The cost of the flood prevention scheme may be even higher. Malaysia's funding for national disasters is minimal compared to other countries.
Hi, my name is Fong. You can call me Josh. I'd like to speak to you about one of the most underutilized methods in flood mitigation. The method that we found most effective and cost efficient in this particular case would be to lower the floodplains itself. As my colleague have probably mentioned, the floodplains in Malaysia are located in Selangor and Pahang along the floods, the parts where the ground level of the river, the river banks are lower than the development areas surrounding the river, and this causes, as during heavy rainfall, we will see an increased volume of water flowing through the rivers and eventually unable to cope with the water flow. The water will overspill and therefore causing the floods in the development area surrounding the floodplains. So one of the by lowering the floodplains, what we do is we mobilize excavators, tractors into the floodplains and simply reduce the earth level of the ground. And by doing so, we increase the water flow capacity, especially during heavy rainfall. We will see water be able to flow through the rivers easily. One of the concerns we have by lowering floodplains is the ecological concern, as that a lot of nature habitat will be destroyed. But one thing we need to realize is that during heavy rainfall and during heavy floods, the flooding itself destroys all the habitat, all the nature, all the forests. And in fact, by lowering floodplains, we accelerate the reforestation process and allowing for, in the meantime, reducing water resistance along the floodplains, allowing for better water flow. And as the forests start to regrow, it itself creates a new ecosystem on its own, allowing for the water flow during heavy rainfall to flow through the rivers and eventually making sure that water does not overflow to the development areas surrounding the floodplains. And the reason why we propose this cost-effective and efficient method of flood mitigation is simply because by doing so, we do not have to go through the elaborate process of constructing retention ponds, all these kind of structures that will require a lot of administrative and bureaucratic work by obtaining design permits, constructing permits, and by the time the permits are being obtained, the flood would have destroyed, as we have seen, millions of lives. We sincerely hope that flood mitigation can be taken a bit more seriously in Malaysia, especially knowing that it's a regular occurrence, and By doing so, we actually not only make sure the well-being of the population along Selangor and Pahang is well taken care of, but also a greater responsibility towards climate change in the world. Thank you.